Welcome, everybody. I'm John Collins. I'm the chair of the select board here in Georgetown. This is the budget hearing for the fiscal year 25-26, and I will let Bob Pavona take over now. Thanks.
Thank you, Jonathan. Good evening, everybody. This budget process actually started last night with school budget. For anybody that wasn't there, the current request for the school budget is $2,782,586. And for those of you, those of you that have copies of the budget, we are on page 2 right now, and if Tyler can bring up page 2.
I think we're gonna have to turn the mic on, Bob, and we'll create some feedback, unfortunately, for the folks on Zoom, but it's the best we can do. And then I'll get us on to page 2.
You point that gun at me? That's been 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
It is working.
Okay. So I'll repeat myself now. We're on page 2 of the Georgetown budget, the total town budget. And the first thing that happened was last night, school budget. And the request there is $2,782,586. The other major budget item on this page is the Saginaw County budget. That is $1,491,723. The total requests for all the budgets from various committees and items that are in town is $6,649,258. That is down 1.4% from last year. However, the external revenues that we get in from town have also gone down. So as a result, the total amount that has to be raised by property taxes has gone up by $396,000 in round numbers. As we go through the various different committees, you will see where, when you get down to the bottom lines, that the amount to be raised by the town through property taxes either goes up or goes down. And that's on monthly value. That having been said, what I'm going to do now is going to go to the last page on the budget, which is McMahon Island, and present that budget. And for those people who don't know, the budget for McMahon Island is a state law, special law, that was inaugurated in 1957. And that requires each year the town will pay 20% of the taxes collected from properties on McMahon back to McMahon for municipal uses such as roads, bridges, boats, public lighting, refuse, and other services not provided by the town. So this year, the budget for McMahon Island is $36,960. That's an increase of 15.4%, which should not come as a surprise if everybody paid attention to their tax bill this year and saw the increase on it. Because it's a percentage, that same percentage applies to them. Any questions on that, Dan? Next up is Cemetery District Trustees, and Julie Pankey will be presenting that, and she is zooming in.
If you'll unmute yourself, Julie.
Hello. Tyler, do you have it on or should I read from my own budget?
I have the budget up.
Okay. Because I can't see the title of the page.
It is Cemetery
you.
District Trustees.
Thank you. I was just comparing it to mine. So would you like me to read line for line, or would you like me to give you kind of the high level version?
Give us a high level version if you would.
Highlight it.
Great. So the cemetery district, their request, you'll see that the FAC has also put in as their recommendation is $33,650, which is down 56% over last year.
Are you still there, Julie?
Yes.
Why is it down 56%?
And Bronwyn, could you state who you are, just so we're doing that for
sorry.
everyone in the room?
Bronwyn Tudor, Select Board Member. Why, Julie, would you explain why it's down 50 whatever percent?
Well, it looks like flags and plaques. The request is a little less than last year, so that's down 15.4%. They did have a new line of burial ground upkeep of $5,000. However, the cemetery upkeep and fence work, they only asked for 8,000 this year versus the 54,000 in the past, which brings it significantly lower. And then the cemetery upkeep, also they were needing $2,000, which includes their removal of trees, their trimming, etc. That is down 69% from $6,500 to $2,000.
Okay, this is one of those areas where the total amount being requested, $33,650. The amount of town funds that are raised by property taxes is only $29,899 because we get revenue from markers and we get revenue from the trust fund. 2% of the trust fund every year is taken out and used to offset property tax input.
Bob, I believe there's a question. And Elaine, if you could come stand, just so we're a little bit closer to the mic.
Hi, just making sure I understand correctly. Basically, this is for something that was like a one-time expense. Is the difference for the big decrease?
Last year, they were planning on doing major repairs to the stone wall around the cemetery. That did not happen. They are not going to do it this year. They're reevaluating to decide what they're going to do. That's why they got the major drop. And they were going to take money out of the reserve fund from the cemetery. But there are some issues with the verbiage in the language for the cemetery. What is it? The trustees. Yeah, I will trust them.
Can I just say something?
Sure.
Sorry. Mary McDonald. The cemetery, this 54,000 right here is this 54. All of that money was going to replace a portion of the stone wall down at 5 Islands. The auditors would not allow us to take that full 54,000 because some of those funds are restricted. So we went back and forth with the cemetery committee and myself, with the cemetery trustees and myself, and they have contacted the contractor on that. They are working out a deal for him to do a portion of it this year, and then they're going to redefine what the goal is of that. You know, they want to do the gates, not sure, you know. So that's still a work in process. Some of that 54,000 will be taken, and it will be taken from the funds. But it's just, it wasn't a done deal. They're not planning on doing it this year. This $5,000 here, I think, is for them to do some work, on one of the roads in Oak. So that's what it amounts to. So although the budget's down 56.3%, as you see here, the allocation is up by 45.6%. Hey, that's because last year they were taking the majority of their funds from the reserve fund, and they're not this year. Okay.
Thank you, Mary.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on that? Next up is Recreation Committee. On page 24.
And we've got the title on the screen this time, Bob. It fits.
Ah, wonderful. That's a good deal. So on the Recreation Committee, you'll see that the budget is down slightly on that, 11%, from $6,800 last year to $6,050 this year. There are a couple of changes made. The most significant one was the YMCA swim program, which has been taken over by the Georgetown Education Fund. And we thank them very much for that. So the program is still available for children in town, so it doesn't come out of tax dollars. It comes out of the dollars that were raised by the Georgetown Education Fund. And the entire $6,050 comes out of property tax. Any questions on that?
The alarm in the back is a phone. It is not an actual alarm, folks.
Next up is Health, Recreation, and Social Services. The total amount here has risen by $4,000 in round numbers. First up, you'll see the expenses for those charitable contributions that are made to various activities in Saginaw County. Bath Area Seniors Activity Center, Bath Food Bank, YMCA, Brunswick Respite Care, etc. on down line. That total has dropped from $5,000 down to $5,800 in round numbers.
38.
Hmm?
You're talking about the donations is down to 38.
Yeah, I rounded it off.
Oh, I got 58. I'm sorry. I misheard you. I'm back.
No,
Sorry.
that's what I said. I
Okay.
said 5,800. Then continuing on, you have patent-free library, general assistance, which has gone up by $4,000 to account for the economy that we have today. Community center and recreation committee. Well, community center stays the same. Recreation committee has dropped down $750, and Richards Library stays the same. So the total expense on that there is $54,059. That is all coming out of property tax money. Snow removal is next. And this is a new contract. First year on the contract, it's a 3-year contract. So this is a set figure by the contract that was signed by the town, what, a month ago?
About.
Yeah. And the sum for snow removal is $367,600 for this year. That's an increase of 6.7% over last year. It includes a $5,000 sum for potential fuel escalation. So the gas price is very variable. Okay, next up is roads. Terry Taylor will present roads.
I can't get the title on the screen, but I've got all the budget items.
That works. Thank you, Tyler. Terry Taylor, handling the roads budget this year. I'm gonna hit a couple of high points, so we basically understand where most of our dollars are going. And then I'm gonna address some fairly large moves that we have that can be confusing if you haven't been in the middle of it. First of all, there's education training that's up 100%. That's pretty straightforward. 3 people have to be trained. That's being planned on, so that's where the $500 are. For the paved roads, ditching, culvert and shimming, and gravel roads, ditching, culvert and shimming, the bulk of that is going into North End Road. On the paved area, there are 5 new culverts that are going in, and there are other improvements that have to be done. And then on the gravel portion, likewise, there's new culverts and improvements before that road is paved. On tree removal, that number is down, but the focus this year is going to be on Indian Point Road. So, with being on broadband, I'm very glad to hear that. For the contingency, that is up about 100%. The contingency in this budget covers things like our January storm of 14 or 16 months ago. The budget was hit pretty hard 2 years ago. It was not adequate. This year, it's been well more than adequate because we haven't had any storms. The 25,000, the jump from 12,000 to 25,000 is to cover a major storm if it happens like 16 months ago. That's where that number comes from. Jumping down to another number, the road paving reconstruction, 350,000, even though it's down a little bit, that is going into paving North End Road. So basically the focus of this budget above this line, capital expenses, operating expenses, the focus is North Point Road for sure. Moving down, we finished the Robin Hood culvert this year. The town had put away a considerable amount of money in the reserve fund for that, $250,000. It ended up that we received a FEMA grant for $302,400 and a DEP stream crossing grant for $150,000. That covered the full cost of the Robin Hood Road culvert repair. Consequently, we didn't need the $250,000 reserve fund. The next project is the Flying Point Road culvert repair, which is going to be about $450,000. So what we're doing is moving our Robin Hood culvert repair reserve fund balance of $250,000 to the Flying Point culvert repair reserve fund. So that's at the bottom where you see $250,000 moved to the Flying Point Road culvert repair reserve fund. Say that fast 10 times. That is where that money is being moved. Overall, it's a decrease of 41.6%. But after we look at the appropriation side of it, being that we're not receiving any additional FEMA grants or DEP grants, there'll be a decrease of about 2.7%. Questions? Okay. No, I know. That's not the show. Oh, yes.
Contingency funds, they're not usually, they fall to the next fiscal year. How does that work?
They get taken.
Derek, can you repeat that question for those on the video?
Could you
it's-
repeat the question? It was very garbled.
We're working on that, Bronwyn.
Thank you.
The question is, if the contingency funds are not spent, what happens to them the following year? They are swept back into the general funds. Every year they're rebudgeted, so it has to be represented. Okay. Any other questions on roads? Thank you for Charlie for working, Charlie Collins for working with us on this. It's quite a bit of work this year.
And you'll notice 1.7 is not included on that. That's a state road.
Only if we could win. I agree. Okay, solid waste is the next committee we'll be reviewing. There aren't a lot of large changes this year. One thing I'll note on it is this solid waste committee equipment reserve fund. It is going up to $4,000. Actually, it's staying at $4,000. The reason being, we try to keep in the reserve fund $25,000 to $30,000 to replace the compactor if it goes south on us and has to be replaced. The committee has priced that out every year. It was right around 30,000, and that's what we're working to get to in the reserve budget. Equipment reserve fund. If we remember, last year that fund was depleted because there were new roofs that were put on to the structures out there. So we're trying to bring that back up to the $25,000 to $30,000 level. Down on station attendance. Excuse me. Oh, training. Training is down. I've been asked that several times. We're going to online training now. So we don't have to send the attendants away for a day or two, and it saves quite a bit of money. Polling and tipping fee is by far the largest of this. It is an increase. We're looking at about a 10% increase in tonnage in both solid and bulk, bulky waste and solid waste, both of those. There are also hauling fees, et cetera, in that. It's fairly complicated, the process of coming up with those numbers. It does yield about a 4.4% increase. Our biggest problem with this number is that does not issue their increases for accepting the hauling costs till the calendar year. So we won't know if the increases hit until January 1st of the midway through this budget. It makes it very difficult. So we've always tried to stay a little ahead of that. They've been pretty reasonable, but at some point there may be a large increase coming from that, and we can't do much about it. A couple new things, household hazardous waste. There's some new fees involved. It's being used very heavily, but there's some user fees and there's some.
It's based on the units that come out. We have two household hazardous waste days, one in the spring, with the city of Bath, and one in the fall with the town of Bronco. And the fees on those are based on number of people and the number of units. We pay a proportionate share.
Correct. Thank you, Mary. On universal hazardous waste, once again, we have some additional fees this year that are being imposed on us for the amount and the increased usage. Overall, the overall budget increase is 4.2%. Questions? Okay.
Well, thanks, Gary. Next up is Shellfish Conservation. Lisa Sabatini will be presenting.
Hi, it's Sabatini. The Shellfish Committee is only up slightly in the areas where there are mileage increases, very small amount for the Shellfish Warden, also a small amount of increase for the Shellfish Warden's wages, also a small increase for, there's also a $2,000 request for seed clams, the purchasing of seed clams. The Shellfish Committee this year has seeded out at Clods Bay, and I believe they hope to seed again in June at Saginaw Bay. They fundraised for that event, and were able to raise $4,600 for seed clams. And so while they asked for the $2,000 from the town, that money is going to be coming from the money that they've raised. So essentially, their budget is quite flat this year, other than those small increases for wages and mileage. Correct, Chad? And there were some slight increases in their fees. So commercial resident digging licenses went up a small amount, as did the recreational licenses. The cost of purchasing one week recreational license went up a small amount, so their revenues are up about $1,015 for that expected increase in revenue. Any questions?
And next up is the Harbor Committee, which is the local now.
Yes. Again, very few changes with the actual dollars and cents to the Harbor Committee. There is some shuffling of money between the harbor master's wages and the deputy harbor master wages. The rationale for that was that they felt as though typically the harbor master is spending more time, and by changing the numbers of his salary versus the deputy harbor master's salary, it more accurately reflects how the money is spent. Other than that, there was a decrease for postage and supplies. The rationale for that was because, if folks remember last year, they mailed out markers for everybody's buoy, and you were supposed to put a sticker on the buoy to identify it. They decided not to do that this year, so there was less money required for postage and supplies. Again, they also increased some of their revenues that they're charging, the mooring fees have increased, and so their revenues will go up slightly this year over last year. Any questions?
We're all forward for now.
Thank you, sir.
Next up is fire department. Terry's up again.
Terry Taylor again. On the volunteer fire department, I will say the fire department, because most of the members are not volunteer. I'm going to hit a few reasons for increases generally, and then I'll move down through the increases you see on this list. 2 years ago, the fire department came to us and requested upping the base pay for the members for firefighting, for training, for basically all the activities. And the increase was to give near $20 an hour. So it'd be close to being competitive with the our adjacent fire departments that we're paying considerably more. While it may not equal it, it has made us closer to it. At that point, in discussions with, I'll say with Mary and myself and the fire department, we thought the increase was a little high. It was a little much for 1 year. So between us, we agreed to split it over 2 years. This is the second year of that increase. We are increasing the base wages of the base wage number of the fire department members, $20 an hour in this budget. The number two thing that is driving numbers higher is we have 5 new members this year. There are 2 firefighters and 3 EMT members. Obviously, they need training, they need equipment, supplies, etc. With that, let me move down through the numbers. And a lot of these will are affected by the items I just said. In the firefighter EMT training expense, that really comes down to the $20 base salary and the 5 new members. With payroll, fire and EMS admin maintenance, this number appears to jump quite a bit. This is for admin in the office, helping Brian, etc., 20 hours a week. 10 hours of that has always been included. Right now, we have a grant that will offset half of this that shows up down in appropriations of $14,560. So while this looks like a large increase, half of this is being picked up by a grant. That's Brian and his group responsible for finding the grant. Moving down to payroll admin, this is basically the chief's salary. Instead of being an hourly, is being converted to salary, and hence the chief will not be charging specific hours for firefighting, for training, etc. It is contained in the salary number. Once again, down on payroll, firefighting and ambulance calls, and payroll training, those are both due to the $20 base and the 5 new members. Moving down to operating expenses, communications technology. That increase is pretty much a one-time cost. Is it one-time cost or ongoing?
It's, you can put that's
ongoing.
that's ongoing. That's
Okay.
the
What it is
software.
for is new management software. The demands on the fire department have been increasing, and they really need new software to handle this. And, from what I understand, it's doing well. It's helping a lot. So that's where, $2,550 of that 92.8% increase is that number. EMS and ambulance is up 50%. That has to do with, having this backup EMS to us. They have not been charging us. They will be charging us. We are allowing for 10 calls at, can remember, 450 a call, or about that number. So $4,500 of that budget is to handle backup from that, which is happened 4 or 5 times this year.
It was 0 this year so far. It's been 7 times last year.
Okay, there you go. Moving down to gear, uniforms, and health expense, that's up 29.4%. That is gear for the 5 new members. Straightforward. Buildings and grounds is up 29.4%. I'm sorry, excuse me, it's up 103.3%. That is for some central station repairs, then cut off and need to happen. There's also some changes that are being made to the pump house over on West Georgetown Road, so that when we have mutual aid by other pumper trucks, they can connect easily. It's very difficult for them right now, and these changes are being made to accommodate other systems, pumpers from other systems when they render mutual aid. Maintenance equipment, unfunded state mandate here, 39.6%. Essentially, now all of the forestry hose has to be tested. So that is pretty much all the increase there. Office expenses are up 49.5%. That is, there's a phone subsidy for the chief now at $600, $50 a month, and Zoom equipment for training, which is $1,000. That should also reduce the training hours above to an extent. Down in reserve funds, emergency vehicle reserve fund, it is up to 60,000 from 50,000. Part of that comes from the future equipment we will have to purchase. The bulk of the calls are ambulance calls. Right now, both ambulances are in the latter years of their use. Right now, a new ambulance is about $400,000. And it's about a 3-year lead time. And over the next 6 to 8 years, we are going to need to probably replace both of them. While we've been looking at firefighting equipment, purchasing it used, we're looking at purchasing ambulances new, just because of the wear and tear they get on them. So then right now that reserve fund is at $227,963. So it's short of purchasing one ambulance at this point.
And Terry, and Chief Whalen, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the bulk of the calls over the last year, many of the calls have been for ambulance service, for EMT service.
It's about like 80%.
About 75% are ambulance calls.
Okay.
So that's why it's important that we
Yeah.
have running in.
Correct.
And the other thing on this, reserve fund for that was not meant to pay the full cost at the time you purchase. It's to lower the amount that you have to put and lower the amount of loan that you have to get. So it keeps the expense line on a fairly low level.
And Terry, could you just repeat a little bit of what Bob said so the folks from Zoom can hear that important bit about reserve funds?
I had my mind somewhere.
I think these are important points because people typically at town meeting have a lot of questions about the fire department and why we have these expenses. And at least for the folks we have here, they'll hear it now and hopefully they'll be able to help explain it as we get closer to town meeting.
Give you an idea, if we were to order a new ambulance and it came in 27-28 fiscal year, it was $400,000 today. With the current reserve fund additions at 60,000 each year, we would have a reserve fund, around 415,000. I'm sorry. Basically, we would come close to covering the cost of an ambulance. We probably have about around $100,000 a month. There are actually tables we worked out of what the expenses and all that are in different scenarios. Because this has been discussed quite heavily between the fire department, the town, and the FAC. They're big numbers. They're real big numbers. And this equipment, because it's so specialized, is not going to get any cheaper.
Derek, what if you just, excuse me, Bob, just set up with this capital expense one for 20,000, it's just, the 60,000 is strictly vehicle replacement. But as you know, there are a lot of other pieces of equipment at the fire station that are high price pieces of equipment, like your, striker,
Load system, cardiac monitor.
yeah, the monitors, all that stuff, so.
Lucas.
So, we started a reserve fund last year, it currently has $10,000 in it, they're asking to double that next year and put 20,000. And should we do that, then we'll be, at $30,000 at the end of next.
Let me hit a few points on that. Basically, it is for capital expenditures, like we're saying, that are not vehicles. A loader system, I know the loader systems, when they were purchased 3 years ago, were about $70,000 a piece. And there are 2 ambulances. So these are pretty significant numbers. I will say that the volunteer side, or the auxiliary, thank you. The auxiliary side has been shipping in for quite a bit of equipment. They've been shipping in for quite a few of the workout outfits, etc. I
Yeah.
can't remember the whole list.
Brian Whalen, Fire Chief, the GVFD auxiliary, also does fundraising separately. You guys will see the appeal letter out shortly. And, those funds are fundraising for the community and they're also used to offset, capital expenses going forward. So, town's gonna pay their little bit, we'll chip in what we can on our side.
It's been fairly significant today, every year. I'm sure there are questions.
What's the loading system?
What's that?
What's the loading?
Loading system in the ambulances is a system that, takes the, gurney from the ground and lifts it up into the ambulance. Basically, yes. Yes.
New uniforms, I've read about, the safety, concern about fires uniforms.
The question is, will there be required new uniforms? You said based on safety?
Yeah,
I will say in this budget, there are numbers here, for, fluorescent, gear, et cetera, breakout gear, et cetera. The state dictates a lot of what is required, and we have to meet it. Unfortunately, the state keeps dictating a lot of things that are needed and don't fund it, which has been a continuing issue. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I thought I had read in some of the firefighters uniforms are now being
Because they contain PFAS.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
that's what she's saying. right?
Yeah, all the new turnout gear we're purchasing is PFAS free, the liners. So that's kind of the new standard, but unfortunately it does increase the cost of the equipment.
And the auxiliary has been helping with that also.
Terry, if you could just repeat that, we know we're not seeing people asking what Peggy's question was.
When in regards to safety, she was referring to the PSAT.
PFAS.
For those, the P.
He's in there, yeah.
Yes, that are in a lot of the materials that we made. The new equipment does not have those, but it is more expensive. The fire department, through this budget and through the auxiliary assistance, has been replacing them. Other questions? Yes.
No, I thank you, Terry, very helpful.
Say that fast sometimes. Somebody else probably can. Another question? Okay.
I'd just like to make a quick comment. This is a large ask. One of the bigger line items on the budget account. But when you look at what you get in money, you got a group of people that anytime, day or night, snow, sleet, rain, etc., comes out, protect the community. The state makes this a little bit more difficult because of the training requirements that are imposed upon us. Basically, 3 weeks, 3 Mondays out of the month and 1 Saturday are spent training. So it's more than just, let's go out and fight a fire and get back and relax after that big week. There's an awful lot of obligations involved with it. And the people that come out and do that are just invaluable. Yeah. The other thing is that, as Terry very clearly made the statement, the equipment that's required to do this and keep the people safe that are fighting the fires and doing that, and to keep the townspeople safe, so that we have the equipment that will keep you safe. If we have to come out and pick you up and load you in an ambulance, it's done safely. It's vital to the town. Yeah, anything you want to say?
No, because that's great.
I did get a note from Mrs. Trebona, just asking that folks state their name in the audience before they ask a question. And if possible, instead of speaking from the back of the room, come forward so we can make sure that gets picked up. And thank you, Sharon, for letting us know that, and I could share that with Bob in real time.
Thank you, dear. Next up is Code Enforcement Officer Judy Keller.
I cannot get the title on the page, but the whole budget fits.
Hi, Judy Teller. This is a salaried position, so basically, this is the second year for being a salaried position and shared. The only difference we see is a little bit less revenue because there aren't any expectations for the previous. Actually,
Yeah.
Thank you, Judy. Animal control.
Next up is Animal Control. And I don't know how many people are aware of it. We currently do not have an animal control officer in Georgetown. We have an agreement with Bath, and if we need an animal control officer, Bath Animal Control Officer will come out and take care of the situation. And basically, the increase here is 1.2% increase in animal control wages, and the contract with the Humane Society for the animal shelter has gone up 3% from 1577 to 1624. That's about some total on that.
I would just make a quick note, Bob, and to anyone on Zoom or in attendance tonight, if you are interested in being the animal control officer for the town of Georgetown, come to the town office. We would definitely like to get you on board. Shameless plug.
Is Julie still there?
Julie is still here and she is ready to rock for TOP&B.
Okay.
And I'm not asleep.
Next one up is TOPMB, and Julie Panko will be presenting.
Tyler, can you go to the page previous to this, please? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, I'm Julie Pankey. I'm presenting on behalf of TOPMB. I see Stephen Mace is on camera as well to help answer any questions if they pop up. But TOPMB is pretty straightforward this year. We have a decrease. The contingency is down 50% because they did not spend it all. Also, you will see engineering and surveys down 100%. So it was 9,500. We're asking for 0 because there is no engineering and surveying on the docks right now. 5 Island tennis courts, we're asking for 500 again. You'll also see float hall launch and storage is down a tiny bit. And that's because they're not hauling out the finger float. So that's a little bit of a decrease, the 10% there. Mowing and tree cutting, they have a more reasonable bid that was accepted this year for $3,200. So that brought that down also 24.7%. Let's see, utilities went up a tiny bit. That's a 50% increase because utilities go up every year. And then the buildings float wharf, you'll see, has gone down 25%, 9,000 as compared to 12,000. So a little bit less maintenance they're hoping for this next budget year. Reserve funds are all funded at the same. They did add back in, so you'll see the Float and Water Access Reserve Fund was not on the budget last year. It wasn't on for a few years, but it did get added back in as a precaution to have the extra $1,000 and start funding that reserve fund again. Richard's Library remains the same. The tennis court, they did not fund last year, that reserve fund, so they are proposing to fund $1,000 into the reserve fund. And then Todd's Landing will remain the same, and the wharf reserve fund at 20,000 will remain the same. So you'll see a decrease of their budget of 21%, their proposed ask. And all of that, the 44,100 will come out of town funds. And this is just kind of an outline of what their reserve funds look like currently. Any questions?
Okay, and next up is Conservation Committee. Commissioner, and Julie has that one as well.
Oh, did somebody have a question? I see Bill Webster's hand was up.
Oh, I'm seeing Bill's hand just popped up. Yes, so I'll go back to TOP&B.
Thank you. Just one question, because I noticed that you've got $500 for the tennis courts under expenses, and we also have a few $1,000s in the reserve fund. What's determines whether it's going to be taken from the reserve or treated as a new expense item in the budget?
Currently, there is not a plan to do a lot on the tennis courts. However, because there is a significant amount, I think, Tyler, if you want to go down, I think we're approaching maybe 10,000, right, in that reserve fund. Yeah, 8,900, and then they're proposing to put another 1,000 in, which will put them at 9,900. That gives them the opportunity to do any repair and maintenance that they determines needs to be done on the tennis court. And currently they are working with and communicating with the Recreation Committee. And will determine, they have a few bids out on what could be done to the tennis courts, which can go from the 9,000 to endless amounts of money, depending on what you want to do with the tennis courts. So between the Town-Owned Property Management Group and the Recreation Committee, they will determine what they want to do with it. And that will come out of, they're not proposing currently to add any additional funds than what they have in the current reserve fund, as well as the $1,000 that they'll add to the reserve fund, and then that $500 was for Stephen, it was surface coating, right? So very minimal work.
And I do see another question coming in from Susan Taylor, or at least a hand up. If Susan wants to unmute herself.
Bill, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you, Julie.
And I'm here, Tyler.
Oh.
My question was, are there any funds or any plans for the Old Stone Schoolhouse?
Stephen, do you want to talk about the Old Stone Schoolhouse? Oh, where'd Stephen go?
Am I unmuted and on video?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Actually, the first thing on our agenda next Tuesday is to sort of have an open discussion about the Stone Schoolhouse and really what the town investment should be, needs to be, what the TOPMB can do, what we can do with it. I've invited 2 abutting property owners to the meeting. And I'd say if anyone else wants to come, Susan included, we're just going to have an open discussion about, really what it means to the town and how we should move forward.
That's great. And yes, I'd be glad to be included. So please forward that to me.
When is that meeting?
Thank you, Susan.
There was a question, Stephen, again, for when the meeting was, and the question came from Elaine Pinkham.
We meet next Tuesday at 4:00 at the town office.
And if you linger long enough, candidates night is that evening as well.
Well, yes, Tyler, isn't that wicked of you? I guess we should add a little bit more time if more people are going to attend. So we'll be out by the time candidates night starts.
To go back to the question on the reserve funds real briefly. Many of the committees have reserve funds. The intention of the reserve fund is to take care of capital expenses, large projects that would create a spike in the town budget if you did not have money saved up for it. So the amount of money that trips the trigger is whether or not it is a capital expense or a non-capital expense will vary for the reserve fund depending upon which committee it is. But again, it's an effort by the town to kind of smooth out the bumps from year to year in the budget, so that we don't have to take out huge loans and we don't get unexpected spikes.
Wrong, nice word.
Daniel?
I just want to note that when a committee needs to take more than $5,000 out of a reserve fund, which hasn't already been budgeted, they require it. Select board approval is required. So it's not that those funds are not available if it becomes imperative to purchase the ambulance tomorrow instead of 2 years from now, or the tennis court plan is approved and they're ready to proceed, and they didn't have those numbers before the budget was approved. But they do have to go through approval with the select board to spend more than 5,000 out of any reserve fund.
Another way to put it is reserve funds or rainy day funds. We could all have an issue. We had the storms a year ago. We made out pretty good as far as the town war, but it could have done major damage, and we would have had money to offset some of that. Probably not the entire cost, but, and that's the intention.
And I believe Stephen had a comment to add to that.
Well, to Bob's point, we never would have, without the support of the Board of Selectmen, been able to access our reserve funds last winter to repair the town wharf area. So that's what reserve funds are for. That's how that process works. And we were appreciative of the support for that.
Any other questions on TOPMB?
Just a quick statement that I want to be sure I'm reading this correctly, is this appears to me to be the only budget where we are bringing in more revenue for TMPOB than we're actually. I'm sorry, what was that?
Our committee is too.
And for,
But yes, the answer to your question is yes. In this budget, COPMB is not spending with all of their funds, correct? Yeah. But we stopped trying to match that.
Well, no,
with
that's-
zero
no,
funds. Yes, no.
I'm not saying that it needs to matter, I just think that's important to
Absolutely.
point out that the revenue from primarily Hayward
Absolutely.
is
correct.
covering this and then some.
Next up is Conservation Commission. Julie?
Hello, thank you, Bob. Conservation Commission is also down in their proposed budget. So just to review, the general operations is down $50, which is 14.3%. However, instead of taking that out completely, we added, you'll see, to the website maintenance from $150 to $200 because their website maintenance has gone up. So just went from one line to the other. Trail survey, you'll see, is down 50%. Their trail surveying is just left that they're doing the Ipcar Preserve. They will owe John Wood just $2,000 from all of the work he's done over the last several years. So that is down 50%. Trail maintenance reserve fund is being proposed to be funded at the same amount, the $500. They're not funding trail surveying. You'll see they didn't fund it last year. They're not funding it this year because what I just mentioned, John Wood is almost done the trail surveying. The printing costs is down 33%. Because they won't need to print, if any, not as many trail maps. And then trail maintenance is the same at 500. And then we just talked about the website maintenance went from 150 to 200. So that brings their overall budget ask down 35.2% to $4,600. That would the 4,600 would be town funds. And you'll see that they had a transfer from their surveying reserve fund of the $3,000, which went to pay John Wood for the work that he's done in his surveying.
Next up is Planning Board and Board of Appeals, Judy Keller.
This is Judy Teller again. We'll start with Board of Appeals. Met with that committee and you'll see that it's gone up because there are 3 new members on a group that need training, so that's where that money has jumped. And the next thing is Planning Board expenses actually is up 190%, and that is till we have money in the case of additional mailings in the contingency fund. This year they did a mailing that was covered by the budget currently from the select board. So we're putting money in there in case there's more mailings in the future.
Thank you to everyone that responded to that mailing. There were hundreds of them. Do you want me to go to the first page of general government, Bob?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next up is general government. It covers a host of different miscellaneous things. Election expenses, First Church, insurance coverage, miscellaneous town expenses, professional dues, property mapping, and so on. And also, under this page, collects the on one page, the budgets for the Board of Appeals, Conservation Commission, Planning Board, and so on. Combining all of that stuff together, you can see that the budget has gone up about $10,000. But there are no huge surprises. One thing that looks like a major issue is 190% increase on planning board, which was just covered. That's because of the survey and any possible other expenses that are coming from trying to resolve or investigate the issue of short-term rentals. Any questions on that?
Did we want to?
Like for a minute, Bob, is that we doubled the assessing reserve fund request. We used to fund that for. I could be wrong. Yeah, we've been funding it at $2,500. We bumped that up to $5,000. As everybody knows, we did a statistical reval last year. We're looking at a town-wide revaluation, and the sooner we can get it, sooner we can get it done, the better. However, our numbers are still everywhere, you know, so everything that we did last year, we're still having valuations or sales coming in well above what we have it valued at. Tyler and I were looking at it the other day, I think we found 2 or 3 that were under.
Right.
You know, selling for under what we've got, but a lot of them are selling for a lot more than we have to assess that. When it comes time, and you see, we've got what, 107, if we fund it for the 5,000, we've got 117.5. That's at least $175,000. So, and that, you know, will likely change by the time we get there.
And I would just add that queues right now for towns to get in, there is a shortage of assessors in the state of Maine. So while we're building this up, the town really should be moving towards getting in the queue for a reval, recognizing that we might have to put down a deposit and wait 2 or 3 years before it's our turn.
Bob Gravino, the question of the general government, First Church was a budget item of $550. Then we have a reserve fund in general government for almost like 200,000.
119. Yeah, Bruce.
Any thoughts on where we're going with that program? I would have to defer to the select board for comments on that.
Bob, can you repeat the question?
The question was, is there any plan for the First Church? And why the budget on $550?
Electricity.
At this point, Bob, that's strictly electricity. Okay, sometimes we had, we did have to go in and dehumidify at one point. We already dehumidified from somebody because it's so down wet in that tunnel, you know, but that's still strictly electricity at this point. Yeah.
Water and everything else is controlled.
Yeah.
We're trying to keep all costs to a minimum.
This is John Collins, Chair of the Board. We had some ideas back in the beginning of COVID when we had thought ARPA money and some other grant stuff, see if we could utilize the building for something, and that kind of fell through, and we've been busy with other things. So we haven't really put a lot of thought into that, but I know that's gonna be something that's been mentioned and, have to be figured out in the next couple of years. So at this point, we do not have any great plans for that building as now.
The town had looked into applying for congressionally dedicated spending previously in a different climate in Washington where there was more funding going out to states. And so that is a part of that discussion as well. There was ARPA funds, but also hope that other monies had come in that did not.
And can I just make one other comment? On the reserve, on the 119 is in the reserve fund. Back in 2020, I think it was, we had requested, on the town, on the warrant, $100,000. And we're at a separate article, and that's really where that money came from. When we received the church back in, early 2000 from the parishioners or from the, folks from the church, they gave it to us for like, I think it was $50,000, which we put in siding, the roof, the ditching, this and that, and the other thing. So we've slowly been building that fund because we were going to do something with that building. I mean, it just hasn't gone anywhere. When we first got the ARPA money in, we dedicated a bunch of that. We've since rededicated that to other town projects like the town wharf, Charleston Pond Culvert, things like that, and the redo of the town office, conference room for stuff. So that really that 119,000, 100 of it was strictly from one warrant article that we passed back. I really want to say when I was leaving, I think it was 2020. Yeah. So, we as a town need to figure out what we want to do with that building. The location is awful for anything other than the church. Now there's no land there. You got the best neighbors you could ever have. No one's complaining about it. But the school utilizes that parking lot. We utilize that parking lot. Bill Webster parks his boat there. He heads out. There's a lot of things that we use that parking lot for. So we as a town really need to discuss, what are we doing with this church?
And there has been a lot of effort put into the church.
Absolutely.
Maintaining the roof, maintaining the siding. There were piping systems that were faulty. We took this is volunteer work. We took the piping systems out. We disconnected most of the electrical, only those that had the necessary things. Some of the support structure in the basement was replaced. The entire basement was dug out, leveled, and re-concreted. There was concrete put on the outside west wall. Outside west wall to minimize and to eliminate the greatly reduce the amount of water that was seeping into the basement, to keep the humidity down and moisture. So an awful lot of effort has been put in there, and an awful lot of it is strictly volunteer work. But it's at a point now where, in order to proceed further, there has to be an objective. There has to be a goal in mind.
So Bob, I will say that REA Select Board, I will say that the Gahi initiative has looked at First Church and spitballed that around, whether that's an option for attainable housing, that's the Georgetown Attainable Housing Initiative. But I don't know currently where that's at with them, and we could follow up with Susie Wren. Pam Ganell was part of that initiative, Dave Trish, Michelle Melanson. So, we've been at some of those meetings, you and I have been a lot, and so that's a possibility. But we'll have to see where that goes.
That would be a major effort.
It would be a huge effort. Probably the building would have to be demolished.
And
that would be a shame.
It would be a shame.
And I would just add, having been in the building over the last 2 years several times, there are big costs associated with the mold removal and the lead removal in the painting. And so it's not just as simple as it would appear. Those are items with huge costs. And again, The humidity was a real wrecker inside of that building, and it was quite sad, truthfully.
If there are no further questions on general government, next item is town office expense. This is basically maintaining and keeping your town office going, the office machineries and keeping it clean, maintaining the computer software, maintenance, office machines, copier. The copier, we got a real deal there. We've been leasing it for last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, we bought it for penny.
we basically now own it.
Yeah.
So we don't have any lease bill there anymore. A big item, of course, is as you would expect in the office, supplies and paper, postage. And, you know, I just don't understand the personnel in the town office, so the telephone expenses are just going through the roof. That's a joke.
Copper line.
That's a joke.
Like,
But at any rate, the overall budget on that actually came down by about 3.5%. So, you know, it's a good deal. Any questions on town office expenses? Town officer salaries. Mary, you want to talk about that?
Sure, sure. The select board this year chose to put into the, whoops, wrong sheet. For the salaries, a 2% increase. We carried that 2% increase over from, the town office to the solid waste committee, to the, harbor master not animal control, harbor master shellfish. So everybody that is paid a salary from the town office or from the town, received a 2% increase. That is, in this case, is with the exception of Tyler, who received not only an merit increase, a COLA increase, but also a merit increase. So that's why the difference there. And then the EMA director, that we used to pay a $250 stipend to the EMA director. We found that when we started having these big, huge storms that were costing hours and hours of work, that simply wasn't fair. So last year we put in for the first time into budget, $2,500, and then a $250 stipend. And again, we just kind of bumped that up by 2% this year. Okay. Good.
I would add on that EMA director line, Mary, that part of the reason that we switched to hourly as well is that FEMA will reimburse hourly wages at a reduced rate, but when it comes to a stipend, they will not reimburse anything. So Chris Wilcoxon put in copious amounts of hours in the immediate aftermath of the storm, and we could not claim any of that. And so it really is a good move.
Okay. Next up is the Georgetown Central School. The school budget happened last night. I'd like to point out on that the overall school budget went up 0.8%, which is phenomenal. It's an amazing amount. Anytime you do something like that. And not only that, the amount contributed by town funds went down 0.1%. But seriously, I mean, if you keep a school budget under 1% increase, that's fantastic. That takes a lot of effort, a lot of work. The next page is, the only thing I'm going to say about the next page is expected revenue sources. Throughout this budget process, you've seen where there have been outside monies coming into the budgets from different paths and avenues and whatnot that are non-property tax induced. And this is an attempt to lay all of that out, show you how much we're getting from other sources. But the key thing here is, last year, we had over $1 million in revenue sources. Now, a bunch of that was because of the grant monies that we had for the government road culvert repair and things like that, which that's a one-time.
You've
thing.
gone silent. Is something happening?
We could hear you, Bronwyn. Can you hear us?
I hear you.
Okay.
Bronwyn, do you hear them?
No, I didn't hear anything from the on-site people. Do you?
Can you speak a little louder, Bob? Perhaps?
I was saying that this show, the expected revenue sources shows the outside sources of revenue for the town. It's non-property tax money that goes into offsetting the budget. And we had a big decrease in it this year, or this coming year, because last year we had several big projects that we had federal money coming in, such as the Robert Culvert repair.
Does anybody want to go over any of those? I mean, they're pretty straightforward. As you see, the school funding is actually up by 26 grand, thank you. Auto excise tax up a little bit, you know, bank interest has been up significant, so we've upped that. I mean, like Bob said, most of it's, you know, your cemetery thing, 54 is gone. You know, you got 450,000 gone from roads. That's, you know, that's all your decrease right there is, you know, reserve funds and stuff, so.
And that was Finance Director Mary McDonald speaking.
Okay, the next page is the municipal budget. That is all of the line items that we went through minus the school and Saginaw County tax.
And overlay.
And overlay. So if we go on to the total town budget. When you look at the total town budget, as I said at the beginning, the total request for this coming year is $6,649,258. And that's actually down $94,000. Almost 94,500, just slightly less, an increase of 1.4%. And it's amazing the amount of work that has been done by the town committees, the FAC, to go through and assemble all of this and being responsible citizens and doing the best they can to keep all the costs under control. So all of the committee members, the various committees in town, and the FAC, and Board of Selectmen, and the support that they give are to be commended for keeping this in hand. I know there are some places that have just gone berserk on some of the things. So, well done.
Bob? We have a comment from Jess Weller saying thank you to the FAC, and Bill Webster does have a question when you're ready to recognize him.
Thank you, Mayor John.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bill Webster.
Thank you, Bob. And I do appreciate the work of the FEC and those involved with the town on this budget. There is one area that we don't really have much control over, but I'd like to talk a little bit about the Saginaw County tax. Am I correct that that's not yet been finalized?
That is correct.
That's correct. I think they meet next week.
They held their budget hearing on Monday.
Okay.
And if it comes in at an amount less than that before town meeting, I assume it'd be appropriate to have an amendment or a revised warrant amount reflecting the actual amount, correct?
That is correct, yeah,
That is correct.
yeah.
And then,
And
my last
likewise-
question is, if the amount isn't settled until after town meeting and comes in less than what, is in our budget, would the select board, give consideration to that when they set the tax rate?
Yes, they will, because that's part of your tax commitment. As you know, your taxes are committed in 3 separate areas: your municipal assessment, your county assessment, and your school assessment, and then reducing any revenues. So you would put in the actual assessment by Saginaw County. They will mail that to us after they vote on it. But yes, if it is adjusted, it will be fixed prior to commitment.
Very good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
In regards to that public hearing for the county budget, I can share that there were no comments on the budget raised there, though they did have a good discussion afterwards about some logistical runnings of the county, but there were no changes suggested at that stage, and we do expect that it is very likely to come in before we're setting our warrant
Absolutely.
later this month.
Thanks. And it can be amended on town meeting floor if we've got it. If not, it's amended prior to the
Commitment.
commitment.
And it should also be stated, with regards to the county tax. The county tax went up, given the figures that we have right now. It's calling for an 18% increase. That's a pretty hefty jump.
After last year at 14% and the year before that at 17%.
Yeah, I mean, it's an increase of $227,000 in round numbers. Which just makes it all the more important for our community to continue doing what it's doing to keep things in hand. There's some things that are out of our control. This is one of them. But I think all the citizens here are being very, very responsible.
Can I just make a couple of comments about this sheet? Yep. Okay, so as Bob and everybody's pointed out, these here are the breakdown of all of your expenditures, okay? Showing that we are actually, our budget in total is down by 1.4%. But as we said, because of the fact that our revenues are also down significantly, our revenues are down 435,000. The actual allocation from property taxes is up 7.5%. Okay, there's a couple of different things that are still coming into play. This 36,601, which is what we reduce for municipal, for homestead reimbursement, that is lower than last year because our mill rate dropped. Okay, that's all based on mill rate. Okay, our mill rate went from 9.75 in 23-24 to 6.02. Okay, so that's dropped down significant, not significant, but 18 grand. This next one, municipal revenue sharing, according to the state website right now, that number is actually coming in at 78,000. Because there's a lot going on politically within the state, I decided as the finance director to cut that number in half. Okay, again, if we feel that this has changed, this is one of those numbers, we're not voting, you know what I mean, that we can fix prior to commitment. But at this point, we really don't know. You know, if the, there's a, what do I want to say?
People's veto.
To veto the budget that was just passed, if that's the case, we may not get municipal revenue sharing for the period of July 1 until the legislature adjourns again. I mean, goes into session again, which could be as late as January. You know, so I think I made the call. I did speak with the select board about it, let them know, but I made the call to drop that number down in half. Many managers have done that. You know, administrators and town managers have taken that state number that they've given us and cut it because they're just afraid that we're simply not going to get those fundings. Okay, so in the end, we need to raise $5.7 million for a $6.6 million budget. FAC did a lot of hard work, the committees did a lot of hard work, the school was heroes in coming in. You know, we really thought that, you know, here we go. But it was wonderful, they did a great job. All of our committees are very brutal. Sometimes we cut off our nose despite our entire face. So, you know, just know they really are working hard. And we do the best we can with what we have to work with. So, yeah. I don't really think, oh, one other thing that I did want to mention. I don't know if a lot of you folks get the Singing Bridge News, the newsletter from Allison Freeman. I just want to correct one statement that has been put out there a couple of times. I wanted to snag it last time, but I got on to something else. So, excuse me, in her thing, she says, please note, the budget hearing is the last practical opportunity for substantive discussion or possible changes to the budget. That is not the case, okay? Town meeting is where if you have a problem with this budget, that is where you bring it up, okay? How we write our warrant articles, you cannot increase it on town meeting floor, but you can decrease it. Okay, so I just want everybody to realize that this is not the end. You know, if you wanted to say, I don't think conservation should do any trails committee, and I think we should cut that $3,000, whatever. You know, that there is an opportunity. Right? God's gonna get shot on the way out. I just don't want people to think that this is it. It's not. Okay, but the select board does take your suggestions into mind at a public hearing for the town or the school, and they make adjustments before this makes it to town meeting based on what they've heard. Okay, but that doesn't mean you don't have the opportunity to do things in this budget at town meeting. Okay, just want you to know.
One quick question, clarification, if you will. If the town votes to decrease a budget for a specific committee, and they say they want to decrease by $10,000, the town government has the option to where they take that $10,000, and it's not line item by line item, but the person or persons that vote to decrease it cannot specify which line item.
That is correct on the school side. Okay?
Okay.
Because lots of times our budget will appear just like this. They could say, TOPMB shouldn't have $25,000 to do that. They shouldn't be doing that this year. You know, it all depends on how the budget is presented on a warrant article. Yeah. And the school used to be the only one that you could increase as well as decrease. Again, it all depends on how the select board chooses to write the articles. They no longer do that. They only allow decreases, no increases. Right? Good? Yep.
Nobody has anything else further. We can adjourn.